Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is going to be all about SQL Server 2008 end of life. So we've titled it Beyond SQL Server 2008 end of life. So my name is Chris Kurzweil. I'm one of the sales engineers here at Redgate, and I'm going to be hosting today's webinar. I'm joined today by our lovely presenter, James. James is from Coeo. Say hi, James.
Hi, Chris.
So, hi, James. And yeah, he's a sales and marketing director from Coeo, and he'll be going through all the good stuff with you guys shortly. Before we get going, I just want to cover some of the essential, basically housekeeping stuff. Effectively, any questions that you have, please feel free to ask away in the go to webinar section, and we can cover them. We can try and cover them as we go.
Yeah, certainly.
And we'll also have a Q&A section at the end. So if we don't get to it during the webinar, we can also look to come back to that. The session is also being recorded, so if you miss anything, don't worry. We can always send out the recording and you can catch up at your leisure. So before I pass over to James, one quick word about Redgate, for those of you who haven't heard of us before. So we are a software company based in Cambridge. We've been around for, well, coming on to 19 years now. We've got about 230, and that number is still increasing, so it wouldn't surprise me if that gets updated soon. We really like to practice what we preach. So we love the world of DevOps and agile processes. So one thing I really want to highlight to you guys is the product releases. So over 1,000 releases last year. Effectively, we believe that by getting a lot of releases out there, we can best serve our customers. So we can provide all the value that they need as soon as possible. We're used by around about 91% of the Fortune 100, but 200,000 customers globally. So I think we're pretty well. So that's enough from me. James, I'll pass over to you. And yeah, enjoy. I'll be back at the end.
Thank you very much, Chris. So welcome everybody to our Beyond SQL Server 2008 end of life story. My name's James Boother. A quick potted history of me. I started out with a computer science degree. Fell in love with C# and was programming in that for a few years. And then I joined Coeo as a data platform consultant. From there, I moved on into our commercial side of the business, and I like to think that I'm bringing engineering to sales and marketing. I have a good friend, the CTO of retail and consumer goods at Microsoft, who regularly introduces me to technical people as the sales director at Coeo. But he says, don't let that put you off, because I am a geek at heart. Often you'll find me wearing my Lego cufflinks. So a quick history of Coeo, just to give you a bit of background about us in case you don't know who we are. We are a support and consultancy business. We're helping many customers all over the globe to achieve performance and availability of their SQL Server platform with our remote DBA service. We also provide data platform and business intelligence consultancy to lots of customers as well. And we love sharing the knowledge that we're gaining around SQL Server, Azure, Power BI, that kind of thing. And we've built a training practice around that. We like to help our customers through the full journey of their application lifecycle, from plan all the way through to manage and optimize. And we've got a team of consultants that can help organizations define their technology strategy, and we think that lives right through the whole service. So we set a roadmap at the beginning with the customer and then have regular checkpoints to ensure that everyone's on track and delivering against the objectives that have been set. During the plan, design and deploy phase, our consultancy team help organizations with their transformation projects. And then once it gets into a production environment, we're there to manage and optimize that environment to make sure that you're getting the maximum value out of the Microsoft investment that you've made. Our values are really important to us. That's why we believe we've got a great team that work with us at Coeo, and also that's why we're able to retain our customers for a long period of time. We actually set about creating a group within the company of individuals across the whole business, and they were set the task of defining our values. So these didn't come from the top, from the directors. This actually came from the team within Coeo, and they came up with 4 key values that after surveying the whole team, we all subscribe to, and everyone now subscribes to this. So our first one is a thirst for knowledge, and that's where we go to lots of events, we read lots of papers, we consume lots of books and blogs, and lots of great content that Redgate produce helps us in that quest. And then we like to say it as it is. So we're going to tell you how we feel about it and share our opinions to make sure that you're making the most informed choice you can. All of our staff have a great desire to help, and we want to make sure that we're working with everyone to find the best solution to any problem that anyone has. And we are quite a small team, and we all really pull together to make sure that the sum is greater than all the parts. And that's how we believe that we create great value for our customers. And it's not just us that say that. We use a Net Promoter Score at the end of every project that we deliver, and once a quarter to all of our customers that receive our dedicated support service. And we've got an all-time score of 87 on our Net Promoter Score. The average for the industry is about 30, so we significantly outperform the industry average. Our thirst for knowledge and desire to help has meant that we've earned many credentials over the years. We've got more Microsoft certified masters in SQL Server than any organisation outside of Microsoft globally, and I'm also a Microsoft certified master myself. We take data security extremely seriously, and ISO 27001 certified across the whole organisation. And we're really proud that in 2017 we won Partner of the Year globally for cloud productivity. So that's enough about Coeo. Let's look at the topic of today. And I'm going to just start with a bit of background around the Microsoft product lifecycle and what it means to us as technology individuals and professionals. So every Microsoft box product goes through a lifecycle, and that starts in the first 5 years from release of the product with mainstream support. And during that period of time, you'll receive bug fixes and security updates. Once mainstream support runs out, so in the tail end of the support period from Microsoft, we move into extended support, and that's the next 6 to 10 years of the life cycle of the product. And at that point, you'll stop receiving bug fixes, but you will continue receiving security updates. And then once the product goes out of support, Microsoft has no obligation to provide the customer with any bug fixes or security updates. And SQL Server 2008 and SQL Server 2008 R2 are going to reach the end of extended support on the 9th of July 2019. And that's why this is a topic of interest for many of our customers at the moment, because we are seeing a lot of customers running SQL Server 2008 and 2008 R2 in their enterprise environments today. From all of the customers that we work with, we took a typical enterprise deployment view, and this is essentially some averages that we've seen across enterprise deployments. So we're still seeing a small portion of 2000 even and 2005 running in customer environments. We're hoping that they're getting much more isolated these days, but we're still seeing in a typical enterprise deployment maybe up to 5% 2005 running. We wholeheartedly recommend that people do move off these real legacy products now, because those security updates are long gone for that product. So it's well worth considering when you're looking at your 2008 estate what you do have running that's downstream from that, because it's amazing how many instances do crop up that were unexpected when the audit gets performed. SQL Server 2008 is actually running at about 30 to 35% of the customer environments. I'm talking to customers regularly at the moment that are actually looking at 35 to 40%, but across the industry we're seeing about 34% deployed estates. And having spoken to Microsoft, their feedback is that they're actually seeing up to 40% across the whole mainstream account base. So we know that this is a big problem, and the next question that I get asked by partners and by Microsoft and by our customers is, why are customers still running SQL Server 2008? And without doubt, the number one reason is application compatibility. So application vendors, typically independent software vendors, have stipulated which version of the data platform their application will run on. And that then ultimately puts a block on upgrading the SQL Server platform. And we spend a lot of time doing work with the customer, advocating the benefits of moving that onto a later version of the product, or potentially working with the customer to see whether they can upgrade that version of the application so that they can then target a later version of SQL Server and Windows Server. The next, and this is probably a good statement, is that SQL Server 2008 is good enough. SQL Server 2008 was a great product, is a great product, and if it wasn't going out of the support lifecycle, I'm sure many people will continue using it today. It's got a good SQL Server core engine within it that performs well, it's scalable, and it's got some great HA and DR capabilities to it. But the end of life does mean that means that we've got a compelling event to consider moving to later versions of the product. And with that, we'll be able to benefit from new HA/DR capabilities, things like availability groups that came out from 2012 onwards. Obviously, whenever there's change with an organisation, that incurs cost and complexity to the organisation. And again, that's a typical scenario that we're seeing. Someone actually needs to sign a check in order to pay for any hardware, any software, and any engineering costs and people costs that come with the change of the underlying platform. So we're doing a lot of work with customers right now about helping the technical audience within the customer that know that this needs to be done, articulate to the people that ultimately will sign the check for that upgrade, and help write a business case to demonstrate the benefits of that upgrade, and the investment is well spent if the organisation choose to proceed with the project to modernise the estate. And the lack of knowledge or skills. So we are seeing that, typically SQL Server upgrades happen every 10, maybe 15 years in reality. And that means that it's not an everyday event, and the IT department that do a fantastic job of running the platform as it is don't experience this very often. And so there's lots of questions that come up as a result of this irregular event. And we're sharing our knowledge and expertise around that to help the customer get over any knowledge or skills gap that they may have. So there are some significant risks of moving out of this support phase. Obviously, the number one risk for everyone is security, and I've got a slide straight after this that just focuses on that. And we're seeing that compliance is becoming a much bigger issue for customers, both internal compliance but also legislative compliance. Since SQL Server 2008 released, we're seeing that the Data Protection Act has moved forward, and within Europe, the GDPR legislation has come into force. So compliance has a higher place at the table of the board of directors within organisations, and this is also a good reason to consider why you may choose to do that upgrade. And onto that comes the financial costs. Obviously, if you're running a compliance risk, there may well be a financial cost to that if you're non-compliant, and also there's a risk of running older legacy hardware and software within your estates. You may find that your hardware maintenance costs increase over time, as do the costs of running that platform. The skills of supporting SQL Server 2005 and 2000 are now very hard to find, and even 2008 will become difficult to find as the years go by, as the whole industry move forward to the more modern platforms. And whilst compatibility to a later version is a problem and a blocker for customers to move forwards, also compatibility back with that earlier version of the platform become a challenge as well. You may require you may get the requirement for a new project or a new piece of software to be deployed within your environment. And if you've settled on SQL Server 2008 as your default platform, that might not be compatible with the new software that you want to deploy or the features that your development team want to take advantage of. So security updates are now mission critical to every organisation. There's some pretty frightening facts that are coming out. 4.2 billion records were stolen by hackers in 2016. 20% of organisations lose customer during an attack, and 30% of organisations lose revenue during an attack. And obviously the easiest way to mitigate against all of these risks is by being on the latest version of the software, because all of the enhanced security features are available to your disposal, and any security fixes have been deployed to the latest version of the product. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, in May 2018, we have new requirements around GDPR, and many of the other regulators are requesting that best practice is adhered to, and typically that requires running on a supported platform from the vendor, in this case Microsoft. So please bear all of these considerations in mind when you're stating your case to migrate from 2008 or older through to in-life supported platforms. So we now recognise that there is a problem, and as all of you joining us today, I'm sure that you're running SQL Server 2008 and are fully aware of those issues that I've raised. They'll resonate well with you, no doubt. So now that we know that there's a problem, that's the first step. The second step is what should we do to then tackle that? So there are many options that we could consider. The first option that I don't actually place here is that we could choose to run at risk. We might say, we'll inform the business of what those risks are and what the cost might be of those risks. And the business might turn around to us and say, you know what, we're going to continue running with something that's out of support. That personally wouldn't be my preferred approach, but that is an approach that some organisations will take. The next approach is to consider taking a special contract from Microsoft, and the exact details of this aren't yet provided because they'll become available in July next year. But you can take the option for an extended security update contract from Microsoft. We're expecting that to cost 78% or 75% of the license fee for a 12-month period. So if we think about the likely cost of that, that's likely to be about £3,000 per 2-core pack of SQL Server for the first 12 months from next year. If we think that a typical server may well be an 8-core server, we can think that the cost of that is likely to be about £12,000 for the first year. Our second option is to consider migrating to Azure. Now, Microsoft have recently made an announcement that if you take a physical server or a virtual machine that you're running on premises and you migrate that into Azure, then you will receive free security updates for the next 3 years. And if we look at what a typical 8-core virtual machine might cost you to host in Azure, and we're probably looking at about circa the £4,000 per year mark. So that's a significant saving over purchasing the extended security updates. Please do bear in mind that you will probably want to take your application servers with you. We rarely recommend to customers that they take their database server up and run that in a virtual machine in Azure and then continue running the application servers on premises. So there will be some additional hosting costs of running your application servers as well as your SQL Server in Azure, and you will incur storage costs for your SQL Server workload as well. We're helping customers really work out a consumption plan for what they will be spending in Azure so that they can really estimate that cost accurately and then provide a really good business case to their business decision makers around what the likely cost benefit of running on-prem versus running on Azure may be. And obviously, once you start modernising into Azure, you can then start taking advantage of all of the other benefits you get from a modern cloud platform. So you've got the option now to modernise on your terms. I'll just quickly expand this slide out. So if you choose to transform with Azure, you could rehost your platform. So that's essentially taking the physical server or the virtual machine that you've got running on premises and lifting and shifting that into Azure and running that on a virtual machine. Obviously, that has the least friction, but you're not really getting much cloud benefit from that, but you will be benefiting from those free extended security updates. You could choose to refactor, re-architect or rebuild, and there'll be significantly more engineering costs to that, but then you may be able to start taking advantage of some of the new cloud services that are available within Azure. With both of these options, you may also want to consider how you can save more money with Azure using benefits like your hybrid Azure benefit, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a few slides. If you choose to run on-prem, as I mentioned earlier, one option is to run at risk. The second option is to purchase the free extended security updates, but probably your best option is to consider an upgrade. Upgrading to SQL Server 2016 or SQL Server 2017 will provide you with some significant performance improvements, along with some additional features that have been developed by Microsoft over that period of time. And if you're taking if you're taking SA with your license, then you've already got that upgrade right built into the purchase that you're making from your licensing with Microsoft. So you may as well take advantage of that upgrade opportunity, because that's not going to cost you any additional license costs. So if we now drill down into each of those options that I described on the previous slide, the lift and shift to Azure option is obviously the lowest risk and the lowest friction. We're helping customers use tools like Azure Site Recovery to be able to very quickly take image snapshots of the machines that they're running on-prem, migrate those into blob storage in Azure, and spin up those as virtual machines in Azure. That allows you to essentially replicate that VM very, very quickly into Azure with minimal configuration changes. That means that you can perform that migration rapidly. You can maintain your support and compliance, because Microsoft will then start issuing you with their free security updates to the platform. But your user experience will primarily remain unchanged, and actually your operational experience will remain pretty much unchanged as well. Essentially, the site of that virtual machine has migrated. If you choose to upgrade to SQL Server 2017, you could potentially benefit from some consolidation. We would typically look at, if you're running on-prem, considering a review of your hardware at that point as well, because as hardware performance improvements take place, you can then often consolidate that workload down onto fewer physical hosts, and then that saves you potentially some license and also benefits from fewer servers to actually physically maintain, and you'll get additional features that have been added to the product since 2008. And then your third option, Modernise to Azure. So we're really looking at this rehost, re-architect, re-platform option here. If you go for this and start looking at managed instances or SQL database, or running SQL Server in containers, then you do need to start thinking about regression testing your application to ensure that you're not introducing any risk to the code that's already been developed. But then you might benefit from some of the new features, and overall it will reduce the envelope of maintenance activities that you need to perform. So it gives you some great options to really start thinking about how you can transform with the cloud. I've broken all of these options down into positives and negatives of each of these shifts. Really the lightweight option with lift and shift, you get very few of the cloud benefits if you go into Azure, but you maintain that compatibility. 2017 is going to be your best option if you want to upgrade, either in virtual machines running on-prem or even in Azure as well, because you're going to get the best features that are available and it's your longest term solution. You will need to check vendor support and it will require some testing. And that's not likely to be the last upgrade you ever need to perform either. We've already had the announcement of SQL Server 2019, so start thinking about your upgrade plans as soon as you've made that migration to stay modern and up to date, so you don't end up with a big downstream set of SQL Server deployed. If you modernise to Azure and start using the PaaS services, you get the absolute maximum solution lifetime. That will become an evergreen platform, and you will no longer need to do software updates to the platform itself. Microsoft are going to take care of that for you. We're often finding that customers find that this is the most cost-effective route as well, that they are actually set because they're using less resources by just running the workload that they require versus running in virtual machines. They're actually getting a cost saving over running virtual machines in Azure. There's obviously a limited surface area in these PaaS services. They're very much taking a microservice approach where the big box product has been split down into 20+ different services in Azure. So you need to consider whether the surface area that's used by your application is supported by the PaaS services, and that might require some re-architecture, software development cost, and some testing and migration effort to achieve. So I've mentioned that there are some benefits in terms of cost of running in PaaS services, and I've got a couple of slides that break that down into some detail. So the first one I really want to talk about is the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So if you took a full virtual machine running in Azure and you pay for that with your SQL Server Enterprise Edition license and a Windows license, and you pay for the full virtual machine, pay as you go, you will be paying the full rate for that. If you then take your hybrid benefit, so rather than paying it as a pay-as-you-go for the whole stack, you take your SQL Server license and your Windows Server license from your enterprise agreement and use your hybrid benefit, the software assurance, to use that license in Azure, you can save up to 75% against that pay-as-you-go gallery item from Azure. If you then take your hybrid benefit, you'll then save up to 85%. And then if you then take reserved instances where you're saying, I know exactly what I'm going to use for the next 3 years and I'll prepay for those resources, you can save up to 93% against the list price. So it's well worth, if you are considering a migration to Azure, looking at what your licensing position is today, what options you've got for running those licenses in Azure, and then what benefit you could get from using that license in that new Azure environment. You may also be able to benefit from reserved instances. I mentioned this in the last slide, but you can also use this for SQL database and virtual machines as well. And again, we can start seeing that by using your hybrid benefit, you get your 55% saving, and then by leveraging both your hybrid benefit and your reserved instance, you can save up to 80% against that list price. So the combination of those two license benefits can make a significant difference to the run rate of running that workload in Azure. So we've gone through what all your options are. We're encouraging customers to work with us on this transformation journey, and as a result, we've come up with a sort of 4-step methodology that we're working with customers on their migration. So we're offering customers a free assessment So really look at what they've got running on premises and possibly in the cloud today, and then work with them to create a high-level plan of what they need to do for their application, SQL Server, and Windows estate to determine what directions are best suited for them. Some customers are then choosing to work with us around that, and we're then offering a monthly fixed price to help the customer with the plan, execute and optimize phases. So customers that choose to go down this route with us, we're onboarding them onto our dedicated support in the plan phase, and then we're working side by side with the customer to mitigate the risk of end of support by the end of July, and that's either by doing an upgrade on-prem or a migration into Azure, building out all of the Azure building blocks if they're not running any workload in Azure today, or optimizing the Azure platform that they have built for a SQL Server workload. Migrating that straight into VMs to make sure that that's done quickly before the end of July. And then once we've got that running, we're deploying all of our monitoring and tooling around that to be able to then start looking at doing cost optimization. We're really keen that our customers make the most use out of Azure, but they're not spending the most money on it. So we're working closely with them and using the real-time monitoring of performance and optimization to really understand, or utilization to really understand how they're using that workload in Azure, and making real-time recommendations around whether they should be in virtual machines or whether they should be in PaaS, and if they are in PaaS, which tier of the PaaS service that they should be on. We're finding a lot of our customers go through workloads that are quite peaky. Maybe they've got seasonality around the use of their applications, and we're helping them upgrade and downgrade the service tier in real time to support that workload and really get the maximum value out of the services that they're purchasing. Microsoft have created some really good resources around the SQL Server 2008 end of life. The tricky thing is it's difficult to find. So I thought I'd share this link. If you go to Microsoft.com ENGB SQL Server, that will take you to all of the great features that are available in SQL Server 2017, managed instances and SQL database. What it won't help you with is what you should do with SQL Server 2008. So if you whack on that SQL Server 2008 onto the end of the URL, then that will take you to a page that is dedicated to the end of support. And then you might want to consider some of the tools that Microsoft have built to help you around this. So Microsoft have an assessment tool called the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. We strongly advocate customers run this. You can run it in two modes. One is a discovery mode, and it's an agentless tool that will go out and discover all of the SQL Server that's running on your estate, and that's really handy. We found SQL Server instances that people had no idea that were running in the IT department, that may have been picked up by analysts or by third-party applications that have been deployed by teams outside of IT. And so doing a full sweep of the whole enterprise picks up all of those. And maybe even instances of SQL Server that were deployed for a project a long time ago that everyone has quite rightly forgotten about. But it's important to make sure that the whole estate is covered by the audit. So use this tool, run it against the estate. Once you've done that discovery and you know what the full production workload looks like, you may well quickly want to exclude developer machines and pre-prod environments and really focus on your production environment. You can then switch from a discovery mode into a performance capture mode. And essentially this runs some really lightweight WMI queries against the target servers about every 15 minutes and just collect some performance stats. And then that allows you to gather up all of the data and understand exactly what the workload looks like, so that you can then start planning what your future deployment should be for SQL Server, whether that's on-prem or in Azure. Another option that you might have available to you is if you're running any monitoring tools today. So you might be running SQL Monitor in your environment, for example, and that will be capturing a lot of performance data about what you're using. You could run some reports against that and then start planning your future deployment based on the tools that you've already got running in your enterprise that are already capturing all of the information you're after. When we're doing a planning exercise, we're really interested in sort of 3 key stats. 4 key stats. 1, how many instances have we got running in the estate? Then for each instance, the CPU utilization of that server, the memory utilization of that server, and the I/O throughput on that server, because that then allows us in broad brushes to start determining what the future server requirements will be like, whether that's virtual or physical. Microsoft have the Database Migration Center, and that has all of the tools for you to consider around database migration assistant and that kind of thing. So you can then start planning which direction you might go in. The database migration assistant's got a really good feature that's quite new that allows you to really plan from a single physical or virtual VM that you've got running instance of SQL Server, what each SQL database within it is actually consuming and then which tier it recommends you go to for SQL database. Previously to that, it was very difficult to actually identify a single database workload across a whole server. So that's a really useful tool as well, worth having a look at. And then you might want to start looking at the security center within Azure, because obviously you're going from having a lot more control and visibility of the security that you've got running on-prem to moving much more towards an identity mindset in the public cloud. So you've really got to think about how your security is applied in Azure versus to the traditional way of having perimeter security around your whole environment on premises. So I would certainly advocate really getting up to speed about how you go about designing security in Azure and looking at the Azure Security Center to give you guidance around that. At Coeo, we've built a set of resources to help you as well. We have created a video that's up on our website. We've got a white paper and there are some flyers available that we can give you access to. So I'd just like to finish on the free assessment that we've got open to all of our customers and all of the Redgate fans as well. We're really keen to help you get ready for this move. So what we're asking people to do is to run the Maps Toolkit in their estate. We can guide you through that, and the Redgate team are very aware of this, and we've worked with them to make sure that they've got all the pointers for you. So you can run the initial assessment yourself, share the data with us, and we'll help you with an assessment of that data. Either meet with you through a Skype for Business or go to a webinar meeting and help you create a best course of action to move forwards with. My name's James Boother. These are my contact details if you wish to contact me. And now over to Chris, who may have some questions from the audience.
Great. Yeah, cheers, James. Thanks for that. That was really interesting, and I definitely learned something new. So let's see if we've got any questions for you. Got a couple that came through. So one here around about, it looks like around about the release cycle of SQL Server. So the question is that SQL Server's releases are getting a little bit more frequent. Do you think they'll have an impact on the support lifecycle of those instances?
So at the moment, what we've got published from Microsoft is that all of the box products are going to continue on that 10-year lifecycle program. So SQL Server 2017, 2016, 2012, and when 2019 comes out, we're anticipating that to have 5 years of mainstream support and then 5 years of extended support. So for the time being, that's likely to be the case. What we are expecting, though, is we're seeing already that the frequency of delivery into Azure is very rapid. Microsoft are embracing the whole DevOps mentality of release regularly and release fast, as you guys do at Redgate as well.
Yeah.
And we're expecting that to continue. And what we were also expecting to see is maybe the cadence of releases and new features into the box product may increase a bit as well. And it's interesting to see that recently the Power BI team have announced that Power BI Server is going to go through a cadence of 3 releases a year. Now, obviously, that's got a much smaller code base than the full SQL Server box product, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a regular release cadence of new features and fixes to the box product as well. So even if we do stay with box product, we should take that into consideration with our patch management policy and start thinking about how we can stay current with the latest updates and the latest versions of the product, so that we don't get this big long tail of downstream product that we've got a big problem to deal with.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you generally think that the kind of big box releases are something that will disappear, or will Microsoft take a while to get there?
I wouldn't be surprised if we just see regular releases of the box product. Okay. So maybe more releases more regularly, but then packaging those up into the big release that we see at the moment every 2 years typically. Maybe that might become slightly more frequent, but there are plenty of organizations that still have to go through a lot of process before they can do a big software upgrade. So by grouping that all up into a version release, that gives them the opportunity to plan for that and be prepared for it.
Makes sense. Okay, I've got another question here around about Azure. So actually 2 questions. So the first is you mentioned the free security updates when a client shifts their environment to an Azure VM, and how long they last.
So those free security updates are going to be available for 3 years.
Okay.
And what we're anticipating at this stage is that when you migrate that workload to Azure, you'll then need to inform Microsoft that you've done so, and then they'll provide you access to those security updates through a portal to download, and then you'll be able to download them into your VMs that you're running in Azure. So that will still give you full control over that patching experience.
Cool. Another one on the similar topic, I guess, but what's the proportion of clients you're seeing that are moving into Azure? Are you seeing a huge uptake, or is it?
So I think it's varying by industry vertical, to be honest with you. We saw retail go quite quickly into Azure, probably because of the pressure of some of the really big retailers like Amazon, and so they needed all of the cloud benefits to be able to compete in that space. A lot of them are doing a lot of web orders as well, so it's a natural place to move that into the public cloud. Industries that have traditionally been more cautious about the public cloud being financial services, but I'm seeing quite a rapid migration now of those customers that are saying, we can see all the benefits of moving to Azure. There's financial and there's transformational benefits of that migration. We can be more agile, we can take advantage of the new features faster, so it's worth us making that migration. So I'm seeing more customers moving now than I was 12 months ago. I'm seeing a subset of customers that actually took advantage of a licensing benefit with software assurance, where you could use unlimited virtualization on physical hosts by licensing the physical cores. And they've managed to get extensive use of those cores and very, very high density workloads running on a few number of physical cores, which has got them amazing value for value for money out of that license. When you move that to Azure, you're going to lose that benefit, because essentially you're going to license every virtual core within the virtual machine. And so those customers are at the moment looking at an upgrade on premises for that workload, and then are creating a hybrid scenario where new workloads are landing in Azure, and those incumbent workloads are continued to run on-prem. So I think, in short, it's a mix.
Okay, cool. Thank you. One more question here about the discovery tool from Microsoft. And the question is whether that is only going to find discoverable databases.
It will only find those that it can discover, yeah, absolutely. So you need to install it into your network on a virtual machine, typically, or on a physical server. It can then get pointed through Active Directory at every server that you wish to run it at. It will run under an identity that you provide. So depending on the security context you provide, that will maybe increase or decrease the scope that it can discover. And typically it will be discovering all of the servers on a network segment. So do bear that in mind when we've worked with customers with quite complex network environments. What we've typically done is installed it into the different data centers or different network segments and run it under the appropriate credentials within each of those environments, and then joined all of that data together at the end so that we can see the full picture of the environments.
That makes sense. That, I believe, is all the questions we have for now. But I suppose if anyone does have any further questions, they're always free to contact you.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And then one last thing before we go is that I just wanted to mention about SQL in the City stream. So our last big free webinar of the year, the SQL in the City stream webinars at least, it'll be on the 12th of December, that's a Wednesday. The theme for that webinar is all about the journey to compliant database DevOps. So we're going to have all of the usual suspects, the Microsoft MVPs, Kathy Kellenberger, the editor of Simple Talk. We have Grant, of course, the scary DBA himself, the editor of SQL Server Central, or Steve Jones, and then Kendra Little, the founder of SQL Workbooks. If you're interested, please feel free to head over to the website and register now. And yeah, look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Cheers, James. Thanks.